Leicester, Nagram, Selleck, Moncton, Cedar Falls, and the old Snoqualmie Road. There are hidden places, forgotten towns, rivers stretching through miles of remote wilderness, abandoned houses that used to be full of life. Before that, there was a railroad over Snoqualmie Pass and out to Everett, delivering timber and coal and people to and from. There was a trail, seldom used by people from east and west of the Cascades, leading to remote sacred sites of great spirit power. The source of water is the most sacred, and water is life. The Milwaukee, cutting through once sheer cliffs, areas of Lake Ketchelis, what once was the town of Laconia, then became Hayek. Rambling down the hillside along the old Snoqualmie wagon road and onto Rattlesnake Lake, named after the prairie that then became Moncton, named by early travelers heading to Seattle who mistook the sound of a seed pod rattling in the wind as a rattlesnake. And from the southwestern edge of the lake, Cedar River rambles out to the Salish Sea, passing near Maple Valley and Covington through Duwamish tribal territory. One of the most sacred sites, Cedar Falls, was a destination for tribes throughout North America. It also became the name for that railroad station near Moncton on the Rattlesnake Prairie. The dams and pipelines built in reaction to a massive fire. Not a forest fire, but the city of Seattle, newly incorporated in 1869, had been booming for 20 years when on June 6th, 1889, starting in a cabinet shop with a pot of flammable glue, engulfed much of the old Pioneer Square down to the water. Seattle realized that it didn't have the resources to fight fires on such a massive scale. And while my great-great-grandfather, Hugh Boyle, rebuilt the city, one brick at a time, the city of Seattle began the arduous process of pipelining and damming sections of the river all the way up to its source, Cedar Lake. When John Antone Sr., my dad's dad, began working for Seattle City Light in 1928, he helped build the first powerhouse. At the time, there was no safety in place for workers. So imagine running a wheelbarrow full of cement on a skinny plank with no guardrails above the shell of a new building. One wrong move and you fall. Later named Chester Morse, John Antone remembered Olympia politicians flying in on private floating planes and fishing in the water, even though this was off limits to the general public. Archaeologists have found 7,000-year-old fire rings around the lake, as it was the entrance to Yakima Pass, or the Cedar Pack Trail connecting east and west. Snoqualmie people guarded the opening and took a toll from visiting tribes. Blankets and furs and valuables were traded for entrance to the Snoqualmie Valley. The dams put pressure on the hillside, and since it was rumored to have a weak point made of stacked rocks deposited by glaciers during the slow melt of the last ice age, in the spring of 1915, Chester Morse seeped through and down the hillside, flooding the town of Moncton that was established in 1906, creating what we know as Rattlesnake Lake. 3 years later, on Christmas in 1918, Boxley Creek blew its banks, creating the Boxley Blowout, which wiped out the town of Edgewick and the North Bend Lumber Company mill. What is left after a great flood? A gravel pit becomes Gold Creek Pond. Rivers bend and arch and dig new paths. Water is power, and water is life, and always finds a way through. If you go looking, you will find these pieces of our past, hidden under creek beds, under floorboards, up the trail, around the bend. This is our heritage. We are tellers and keepers of history. The Gold Creek Valley starts at Gold Creek Pond, once a gravel pit, and now the Forest Service has plans to transform this location back into a wetland. Further up the Gold Creek Valley and up against Chickaman Ridge, you find Joe Lake, and above that, a section of the Pacific Crest Trail. My father, Tom Antone, worked on a dynamite crew building trail in this section, and in the summer of 2015, my dad, my son Parker, and I traversed this section of trail during one of the worst droughts Washington had ever seen. We ran out of water and became dehydrated. Just the day before, Parker caught his first fish in Joe Lake, and we enjoyed it for dinner. On the 8-mile stretch of Chickaman Ridge, we exhausted our water and leaned into the path, aiming to round the bend and fill up with water at Gem Lake around the corner. At 75 years old, Tom was unsteady on his feet, and we were lucky to make it safely across. When my Aunt Christy passed away, our family gathered at Gold Creek Pond for a ceremony and service to spread her ashes and send her home. Here we are on Yellowstone Road, also part of the original Snoqualmie Wagon Trail. And here you have the previous residence of my Uncle Joe Rohrbach, who is a wood carver and a carpenter who inspired me to take up the family wood carving tradition. Here are some of my original pieces. I use chisels and knives and gouges. Everything is hand-carved. Many of my uncles and both grandfathers also practiced folk art and wood carving. Joe, along with his brothers George and Sean and Mark and Paul, and Bob and David and their father Bill Rohrbach, my grandfather, worked off and on for Rohrbach Construction all over Snoqualmie Summit. Soon after the release of The Sound of Music in 1965, many places throughout Washington state wanted to emulate German and Bavarian architecture. North Bend is one example. Leavenworth is another example. As you drive through Snoqualmie Pass, you will notice A-frames that are influenced by this original German Bavarian style. Bill Rohrbach was a screamer, and he smoked 3 packs of Pall Malls a day. Anyone who knew Bill knew that he had strong opinions, and he didn't take shit from anyone. My grandmother, Geraldine Rohrbach, used to do laundry in the basement using an old washing machine. The basement wasn't big enough to stand up tall and straight, so she would do the laundry hunched over in that red house right there. One time I asked my grandfather, Bill Rohrbach, if he believed in UFOs or aliens, and it turned into an argument. He was very set in his ways, and my Uncle George was listening, and later George took a pie plate and threw it up in the air and snapped a photo of it. And then the next time we got together, he had this black and white photograph of a UFO flying in the sky. Now, Bill wasn't all serious. He did believe in little people, and he used to tell us grandkids about gnomes and elves living in little holes in trees and under the ground along Yellowstone Road. He was so convincing with his stories about gnomes and little people that we actually believed that they existed. He would take us out in the woods, and with a long stick behind his back, he would rustle the leaves 10 feet away. After graduating in 1966, my mother ran away with my dad, Tom Antone, getting married in 1967 and spending their first year of marriage in Alaska, working near Kotzebue with local tribal members. It was during that time that Bill Rohrbach carved a nativity set with hand-carved figurines of Jesus, Mary, Joseph, the wise men, and angels in a stable made of cedar shakes and shingles that he mailed special delivery all the way to Alaska. Growing up on Snoqualmie Pass, the family cherished time outside on hikes to mountain lakes and hidden valleys in the high alpine lake wilderness. This tradition continues today. When Geraldine and Bill went shopping, people would stare because they had such a large family. People made comments, and it was known for Catholics to have a lot of children, especially Irish and German Catholics. Eventually, the Rohrbach family sold their house on Snoqualmie Pass and moved to Fall City, built a home overlooking the current site of Chief Canham Middle School, then off to Leavenworth, building the Haus Rohrbach Pension, which is still in operation. Sold in 1978 to another family who have cared for it ever since. Each house built and shared the same style, and some of the most cherished memories started and ended with the red house on Yellowstone Road. So early in the morning, Mark and Joe and George would get up and they would shovel the driveway to make sure that truck got out on time to deliver the kids to the school bus to take them to Easton High School. And no matter if there was 12 feet of snow on the ground, my uncles were up at 3 a.m. making sure there was a path clear enough for Bill's old truck to make it onto the main road and out to the spot to meet the school bus. Over the years, they worked on the ski resort, and that's where my mother met my father. My dad was working right alongside retired coal miners from Roslyn and Cle Elum, who had expertise in dynamite. And these folks came and shaped the Summit West. And when my mom was living on Yellowstone Road and still going to high school, that's where she laid eyes upon Tom Antone. So Webb Moffett was instrumental in developing Snoqualmie Pass and the ski resort. This building right here was known by locals as Webb's Grill. My mom spent time in high school as a waitress working here, as well my aunts. And my uncles and grandfather, Bill Rohrbach, not only built this structure, but remodeled it over the years. Very close by is St. Bernard's Catholic Church. Some of the pews and carpentry work inside and around St. Bernard's was completed by Bill Rohrbach, John Antone Sr., and my uncles David and George and Joe and Paul. This was the only Catholic church, and still is the only Catholic church on Snoqualmie Pass. Ava and Audie Hench moved to the Seattle area in the 1960s. Audie was born in Bavaria, Germany. A woodcarver and carpenter, he also fought during World War II. Against his will, he fought on the side of Germany. At one point, he was captured by the Russians and became a prisoner of war. He was tortured and survived many hardships. Eventually, he escaped and the war ended. And he met up with Ava, and in the 1960s, the early 1960s, they settled down in the Seattle area. He had a love of mountaineering and wood carving and skiing, of course. He spent a lot of time at St. Bernard's Chapel. His children were involved in the local ski clubs. Eventually, they moved down the mountain to North Bend, where the couple created a studio, a wood carving and art studio, including oil painting and wood carving. Here we are facing the Pacific Crest Trail going south, and on the hill there is the entrance to Beaver Lake going down to Lodge Lake. After my parents met, my mom had a huge crush on my dad, Tom Antone. There was a visiting skier from Austria who invited my dad on a date, a ski date, and they were up at the saddle right near Beaver Lake, and my mom came up on the other side of the hill and she was spying on them. She was extremely jealous. She kept her eyes on my dad. My wife Laura and I almost got married at St. Bernard's, but we got married in Seattle instead. But when Audie Hench died, we went to his funeral at St. Bernard's out of respect for the family. Over the years, you may have heard rumor of missing persons, people that are hiking along the Pacific Crest Trail and vanish without a trace. Some of these stories are connected to cryptids such as Sasquatch, or strange noises, or strange lights in the woods. There are reports from Lodge Lake and along the Pacific Crest Trail going towards the Canadian border. In fact, currently, there are several missing persons that have not been found, not even a trace. Sometimes they'll find a trace of clothing or an artifact left behind, and in fact, there are people that are hired by the families to go out and look for anything they can find that might bring closure, that might bring answers to those that are missing, their loved ones. So, for instance, a man named David, we met him in the camp at Lodge Lake. He wandered right into our camp, and he told us all about his profession. He told us that the families hire him to go out and look for clothing, equipment, backpacks, boots, anything, parts of tents that are left over that he can trace or make sense of. What happened to this person? Why have they vanished? Why can't we find any part of them? The woods are full of mysteries, and one of the oldest mysteries is that of another dimension where Sasquatch or its malevolent cousin reside. Sasquatch is the Salish word for Sasquatch or Bigfoot. In the old stories, there are two distinct personalities. Sasquatch is the defender of the innocent, a benevolent force, a friend of human beings that live in this dimension of reality. And the other, which I do not name, I do not say aloud, it's considered taboo to mention the malevolent form. But that malevolent form has a desire to kidnap and take people into the other side, the other dimension of reality. Some of these stories involve cannibalism. I know that's fantastic, but stories and legends and folklore like this exist all over the world. As we near the end of our journey, I want to encourage you all to invite your family up into the woods to a campsite, make a campfire, gather around and enjoy stories and folklore and tales and family histories. These things have healing power, medicine. It brings us all together. And in these difficult times, full of negativity and division and chaos, may these stories live on forever in the hearts and minds of our children and our grandchildren.
My love is like a Douglas fir, strong and tall, through the night the wild wind, it won't fall. No, you can't chop me down. Oh, glory be above. The axe blade, it shatters and it falls to the ground. Oh, my love. Oh, my love. Small town, mountain town. You'll never guess who shared the word. Oh, my soul, who broke the blade, who broke the chain, the old black road. No, you can't chop me down. Oh, glory be above. Your axe blade, it shatters and it falls to the ground. Oh, my love. Oh, my love. Small town, mountain town. My love is like a Douglas fir, oh, strong and tall. Through the night the wild wind, it won't fall. No, you can't chop me down. shatters and it falls to the ground. Oh, my love, oh, my love, small town, mountain town, oh, my love, oh, my love, small town.